r/AskReddit. What was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid? I saw Justin Bieber throw a shit fit and end up not getting what he wanted. We have quarterly team building exercises at my company where you basically go and play mini golf or some other activity capped at $25 person. Sometime between 2009 and 2011. I really can't remember exactly. My group just decided to go for a fancy lunch in downtown Portland. After lunch we took one of our co-workers to the semi-famous Nike store, which was a couple of blocks away, and that was the day Justin Bieber happened to show up. When he and his entourage arrived, he said something somewhat loudly along the lines of, "Y'all are going to have to leave for a bit cause I'm here to do some shopping," and some of his people acted like they were going to try and politely force the already present customers out of the store so Bieber could shop alone, but the Nike employees even more politely told him that was not possible. At that point Bieber lost it. I mean, he threw a total tantrum because they wouldn't shut down the store for him. The tantrum didn't work and he and his folks left in a huff. That's really my only celebrity in the wild encounter, and it's freaking lame. Knew a rich kid whose parents bought a car for and he treated it like absolute garbage, purposely driving it really hard and generally abusing it, confident in the notion that his parents would buy him the one he wanted after he destroyed the one they got him. Well, they didn't buy him another one, ever. He rode the city bus and bummed rides off of friends after that. He was the most entitled ducker I'd ever met. If he was over at your house he would just help himself to whatever was in the fridge like it was some sort of paid buffet. Spoiled rich kid showed up to school in a $325,000 sports car. He was showing off, lost control of the car, and drove it through a brick wall and totaled it. Saw a college guy with a ridiculously expensive car, can't remember the model, rear-end this woman who drove an absolute beater. Her car was definitely totaled and his wasn't looking that hot either. He got out and started screaming at this woman. She was in tears. He kept telling her that she was going to pay for this. When the cops came, I saw each of them give their statements. After that, me and like 10 people came forward and gave our witness statements. It sounded like each and every one of us put complete fault on him, which was the truth. When the cops went back to him, I saw his face just sink. He probably told them it was her fault and just found out that 2 handfuls of people just confirmed that he's full of shit. I've never seen that many witnesses stick around for a simple traffic accident. I think the other people felt the same way I did. That kid was a douche and should be punished for what he did. Not sure what the law is elsewhere, but here in Australia, if you rear-end someone, you're automatically in the wrong for not leaving appropriate stopping distance except for under very specific circumstances. One of my college roommates was very rich growing up. I didn't realize just how rich until I had to explain to her what a coupon was in very extensive detail. On multiple occasions she bragged that she wasn't even interested in her major, philosophy, or college in general, but she was at uni because her parents were requiring her to get a degree, any degree, in order to get access to her trust fund. I don't remember ever seeing her go to class and she eventually got expelled sophomore year over academic dishonesty. I guess this was the last straw for her parents because they cut her off pretty soon after that. This actually served as a wake-up call. She somehow managed to get a public health degree at a different school in spite of the academic dishonesty listed on her transcript. She's doing pretty well for herself these days. We've kept in touch and last we talked she was considering grad school. That's a nice wholesome ending. Local business owner puts son through college and more. When kid graduates with multiple degrees, dad decides to retire and turn over business to son. Son brings college cronies on board, has management all wear white cowboy hats and drive white pickups, begins revamping business. Dad comes out of retirement pronto, gets rid of son and cronies. Years later bankrolls son's run for state rep. The son lost. Dad dies and leaves business to daughter. Here's a switch. Highly successful local doctor/politician expects son to attend medical school and become doctor. Son opts out. Gets job with new company called Costco, pumping gas. He's been with that company ever since. Just his regular pay raises and bonus checks give him a good life. He just didn't want the high stress life his dad had. This is the exact opposite of the plot to Step Brothers. Well, Dale has always coasted off my accomplishments. I mean, He left college his junior year because he said he wanted to join the family business. But your medical doctor left double quotation mark. Believe me, I've told him that, but he just always says it's all about who you know. Dad buys a rich kid a Mercedes. It was pinkish, salmon colored, so the kid beached about it. Dad took it away, sold it, and never bought him another car. Rich brat had to buy his own. About 10 years ago I was having a pint with a friend of mine. His family shit gold, I swear. I mentioned I was struggling with rent and bills while in college and he just said, get your mum to pay for it then mate. She's disabled and we've never had real money. He instantly realized what he said and did feel bad about it. I think it was the first time he really understood that not everyone has their parents to lean on financially. It's good that he realized so fast. Most people in that position are happy staying ignorant. I'll never forget going to see the financial aid advisor at my school to see if I could figure out some kind of payment plan because I couldn't afford to finish the semester, and he told me I should just ask my parents for help. It's one thing for a privileged rich kid to not fully understand what it's like to come from a lower income family, but my college is ducking financial advisor? That's your whole job. This is not the best, as it's pretty sad and frankly undeserved, but a good example of the question asked. I went to a very expensive private elementary school. A friend of mine grew up very wealthy. Her father a surgeon and mother a stay-at-home wife. They were very controlling of her and quite honestly, a little scary. They sheltered her to the extreme and she frequently repeated insane things they said verbatim because that was all she knew. If she was told to clean her room but left an item out upon her parents' inspection, they would throw the item out, no matter what it was. Once it was something very sentimental to her, can't remember what it was, and when she told me and I expressed sympathy, she said something like, "Oh no, it's okay. It's my fault. If I told my children to clean their rooms but they didn't and had their friends come over, their friends would go home and tell their parents about how much of a slob my family is and that can't happen." This was her concern at 10 years old. When it came time for college, they sent her to an expensive, hard to get into school and told her that her sole purpose there was to find a husband, specifically a doctor or an engineer, to keep her as a stay-at-home wife. She flat out told me this was her only purpose, which broke my heart because she is a smart person who was able to get into said school to begin with and her parents should have been encouraging different goals for her. Well, she found a boyfriend, but at the end of her 4 years of undergrad, he turned out to be a cheating narcissistic douchebag. The narcissistic douchebag part was obvious to me from the get-go, but she had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. However, the cheating was obvious enough to be a deal breaker. So instead of going straight to marriage, which disappointed her parents and they kicked her out of the house, she suddenly had to become solely independent, find a job and an apartment, and is doing well for herself. She's a totally different person now and has come a really long way. Jesus Christ. That's some r/racist narcissists right there. Undeserved is a bit on an understatement. Jesus was 100% on the parents. Even the kid came out perfectly fine. Just that the parents didn't need to have such bleachers and she wouldn't have had to be featured on this thread at all. Rich scummy injury lawyer's kid was in my class in HS. Goes to college, mid-sized school in the Midwest, and gets blasted drunk. Parents bought him and his friends alcohol since freshman year, so nothing new, and Ra says he has to write him up for alcohol in the dorms. Punches 2 Ras, then gets cops called on him and knocks a cop's tooth out. Long story short, his parents have to drive back 6-7 hours after one day to get him and he's not even allowed to leave the state until his hearing. Last I heard he's working at a fast food establishment. He might be rich, but he's ducking screwed since he punched the officer. While working in a casino here in Las Vegas, a herd of girls came to my window, and one proceeded to tell me about a great birthday party itinerary that her dad had paid for her 18th birthday, with no adult in the party, just a bunch of teenage girls, out in Vegas, where none of them could do anything because none of them were 21. I couldn't even check them into their reservation. They start yelling and screaming at me. I calmly call security, and security tells them they can either go play in the arcade or leave and try to find a hotel off the strip that will take them and W out being 21. The anger turns to tears. The security guard is unmoved. That's their parents' fault. A stupid 18th birthday gift. People do it all the time, though. Somewhat distant relative spent all of his university years and 20s partying hard with the 120k allowance his rich company owning father gave him each year. He'd travel the world each year going to Bali, Thailand, Europe, every year Oktoberfest, just rampaging. At 32 or so he decided to settle an upscale ski resort area of the US and open a business with his hot gold digger fiancée. When he went to transfer his money to his US bank account he noticed it only came to a few $1,000s. He angrily asked the bank worker why she hadn't transferred the entire amount only to be told that that was the entire amount. His father had cut him off without saying anything and he just hadn't noticed. Absolute flatline. And then, I need more. Heavy drugs, self-pity, and finally recovery with only a small side dish of enlightenment. This is nowhere near as dark as most of these, but one of my acquaintances in college was dating a woman from a relatively privileged background. For reference, almost 90% of the people at this college, including myself, were from similar backgrounds, but most of us had some kind of idea as to what the real world was like. Most of us were in the range of parents have a house and an off-grid hunting camp, been to Disney World at least once, had a Nintendo when it first came out, parents chipped in our first beta Corolla Ridge, and some people were really out there. This girl had no idea how to use most common household appliances because in her home, she had maids and servants for that. She clogged all the common room laundry machines with feather boas on a regular basis. She had no idea how to cook pretty much anything. It was all fun and games until she figured a dryer and a microwave were basically the same appliance. Microwaved all her clothes and burned the entire dorm down. Nobody was hurt but it was a major what the duck moment and many people had to find temporary housing. Whoa, burned the entire dorm, that's a new one. Only other time I've seen that was intentional. Idiot frat boy sent a flaming arrow flying off the roof during one of their parties and burned down the one next door. Luckily no injuries. But that kid had to pay off the entire cost of a house and got expelled. No idea what he's up to now. Freshman year of college, the guy across the hall from me is a spoiled rich kid from a big southern city. Old money clearly coming out his ass. A couple weeks into the second semester he and a buddy found a checkbook on the sidewalk. Stupid duckers decided to write themselves a check and cash it in the bank that the account is in. The teller immediately called the cops and they both got arrested. We talked the night he got arrested and he laughed and said his dad would take care of it and everything would be fine. That weekend we met his dad as they moved everything out of the dorm since his dumbass got expelled. Guess daddy didn't take care of it. If he's not being charged with a felony his dad pulled through. If he's still facing charges his dad still bailed him out. His dad definitely took care of the situation. Well, if he's not in prison for bank fraud. I knew one who apparently couldn't fathom how people live on a budget. We used to hang out a lot at her insistence but she liked to eat at expensive places whereas I'd have no issue having my meals somewhere cheaper. However, she kept pouting and insisting I stay. I said I couldn't unless she wanted to spot me. She didn't. I then walked her through the math and showed her that the cost of my meals with her, every day, totaled my entire wage for the month. She didn't stop pouting but from then on I could eat by myself in peace. Reminds me of a friend that we brought traveling Europe with another buddy. We had a strict budget and he did not. It almost ruined our friendship with him calling us cheap. We were like, dude, we literally can't afford to eat at the places you want to eat. He had absolutely no idea and thought it was just a choice on our end. Yeah man, why don't you just choose to have more money? In a country with high alcohol taxation, rich kids enter pub, like 10-12 of them, throw card at bartender, demanding shots. What would you all like? Whatever, lol. Dad is paying LMAO. Bartender pours double JW. Blues for all the brats and some randoms that they treated. Brat with card had tears in his eyes when the tab came in. Dad's going to kill me. I did enjoy the free whiskey though. A kid from my high school came from a well-known family that was very involved in politics. He slacked off in school and was mostly a condescending ass for years. After graduation, he didn't really do anything, but eventually decided to run for office as he had the same name as his father. He won easily, because people didn't realize it was the kid. As a state rep, He posted on Facebook about enjoying his women battered rather than plain and asking to join the Black Caucus because he liked hip hop. He also dropped a loaded gun on the floor in the middle of a session after fighting for the right to carry a gun in the state house as a responsible gun owner. He kept getting elected despite these issues because his family was well connected and he had a dedicated following from some political groups. After 6 years in office, he gets busted for soliciting sex from a minor over the internet. When they arrest him for that, they also discover he's been dealing drugs. The worst part is that his family is actually super nice and genuinely made the community a better place. But now they have to deal with all the issues from him. He was an apple that fell very far from the tree, comma. Is this in NH? We had a drug dealing gun dropping pedo state rep for a few years. I'd hope there isn't two of them lol. We had a drug dealing gun dropping pedo state rep for a few years. I'd hope there isn't two of them. Yeah, that is amazingly specific. My best moment was when I got hired by a pair of Woodside, CA parents to transition their horrible 18-year-old into the realities of real life. Something that evaded both of them. My first action was to take away his platinum, limitless, credit cards. He threw a tantrum that lasted several days. Where am I going to get money? Get a job. My parents will fire you. They didn't. When he realized that boundaries and budgets had been set in stone, and that he not only had to pay the bills, the rent, but taxes too, he headed straight to college to wait out the next 4 years. He is still a little jerk, but at least he has a job and an education now. How does one get into this line of work? I was the nanny while working through my PDD, so I came to it indirectly. There is a whole workforce of folks who do this. Word of mouth and next door. Used to be a counselor at a pretty nice summer camp, and a lot of the kids that went there came from families that were rich enough to own a lake house on a very nice lake. Average price would be $2.3 million for a second home. Most of the rich kids were pretty nice honestly, but I remember one kid who was the son of some retired NBA player who tried to use his status as a way of winning at blob wars. For people who don't know, a blob is basically a giant bag of air that sits in the water and you can jump on one end and send someone flying off the other. Blob wars was where you would climb onto the blob and try to knock other people in. So the kid was popular and he would form an alliance with other kids so they'd end up getting knocked off before him. I watched for a while and then hopped on. Got the usual hey, let's form an alliance thing from him and said nope. He went on to say his dad was rich and paid a lot to send him there. So I got to tell him being thrown off the blob in blob wars was part of the camp experience. He ended up being pretty relaxed after a couple days and having fun. Was an enjoyable gig. Glad that ended wholesomely. No joke here. Back in high school, 90s, this kid got a brand new Chevy Camaro. I had an old ass 80s Pontiac Phoenix that had the straight six. It was by far not a racing car, but this tool was just looking to brag at what he got compared to the busted cars we got. About 2 days later, while we were waiting at a stoplight, this idiot tries to race us as I am in my car and I pull up with my friends. He starts by revving it really loud and tries to do a burnout. Mind you, the light was red and the roads were not wet, so he managed to get a tiny burnout going. Some smoke and whatnot. When his tires did catch traction, he went barreling into the intersection and smashed the car of the wife of one of the very few cops in my small city. Needless to say, that didn't work out for him very well. At the start of this I thought you were just explaining the plot of Tokyo Drift with slightly different cars. Don't know if I'm happy you weren't bamboozling. Same. I was sitting here waiting for the punchline about Dopey being sent to Japan to live with his father and becoming a drifting legend after a run-in with the Yakuza. There was a kid in my school class who was a trust fund baby and he acted like it. He was picking on people one day, just talking unnecessary shit, and he called a girl a cow. She was overweight. He then got punched by a special education kid in class. And then when he contemplated retaliating against the special education kid, he then got punched by another student who was not special needs. He did not contemplating punching him. I had a roommate my freshman year of college that came from an incredibly rich oil family from the Middle East. I remember him having the hardest time adjusting to not having someone else prepare him food. I remember waking up one morning and going to the kitchen and seeing him try to eat eggs and toast he had just prepared himself. He asked me how I normally prepare fried eggs because his tasted really crunchy. Turns out he had just cracked the egg hole into the pan and prepared its shell and all. I couldn't stop laughing but felt really bad for the dude. At least he tried. True, he was a good dude. Was an interesting semester helping him learn how to live providing for himself. I knew a kid in high school whose parents were loaded. When he got his driver's license they bought him a $70,000 Mercedes. Within a month or two he totaled the car while driving drunk. Parents pulled strings to get him off the full weight of the DUI. Oh, and they bought him another $70,000 Mercedes. He overdosed on a shitload of drugs and booze when he was 23. He's dead. Jesus, that was a blunt ending. You either learn a lesson, or you keep making the same mistake until it kills you. I knew a guy in high school who bragged that he didn't have to pay attention in school because, get this, his grandfather was a vice president of the corporation that supplied the cardboard for cereal boxes for General Mills. Real gravy train, you know. Last I checked, since deleted Facebook he was still working at Best Buy 5 years after high school. Same job he had in high school. I don't think my father, the inventor of toaster strudel, would be too pleased with this. Let it out, honey, put it in the book. When I was a teenager my sister and I saw through our windows that there were two guys getting into her car. We ran downstairs as fast as possible and caught them in the act. One managed to run away but the other one froze and didn't run away. He couldn't have been much older than me. My sister called the cops and the kid kept looking at us and trying to find a way to escape. My sister said, "Run if you want. My brother will catch you." The cops came and so did his parents. His mom drove a ducking amazing car and the lady looked furious and sad. She was dressed really nice and looked like she was pretty successful. As soon as she got out she began yelling, "Why? We give you everything. You have everything. Why would you try and steal? Don't we give you enough?" The kid just seemed to shrink and get smaller. I don't get it. Ducking a hole. I hope he turned his life around and began to be around better people. Sometimes, that's what it takes to get through to people. I hope it did. He was a kid. Wouldn't want him to just keep going down the wrong path. Thankfully his family was rich so he probably had more second chances than others. I hope he took advantage of them. Oh, I have one. I used to work at Starbucks and there was a girl that was just newly hired and in training. Mind you, she was 20 years old and her parents made her get a job. She grew up in a very wealthy family. On her first or second day, I had instructed her to do the dishes to help catch us up for closing. She looked at me with these lost eyes and told me she doesn't know how. Apparently she grew up with housemaids and literally has never cleaned a dish in her entire life. I had to teach her step by step how to clean a dish. But she learned on the job instead of throwing a tantrum and walking out. She's got that going for her. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.